I don't know if you can hear me, but I think you need to know that someone is here. She said it the first night, standing at the edge of his bed with a chart in one hand and the room's quiet pressing in from every side. The monitors beeped their slow, patient rhythm. The window held a thin slice of city light. And the man in the bed, still, pale, breathing only because the machines were keeping a careful count, didn't move at all. But Wren Calloway stayed anyway. She was 27 years old, third year on the neurorecovery floor at Harmon General, and she had learned early that night shifts had their own particular silence. Not empty, but dense, full of things unsaid by people who no longer had the words. She had grown up the youngest of four in a house where her mother sang while cooking, while folding laundry, while sitting at the edge of childhood beds after bad dreams. Singing, in Wren's understanding of the world, was simply what you did when words weren't enough. So that first night, after she'd checked his vitals and straightened his blanket and stood for a moment looking at the face of a man who had no idea anyone was watching over him, she sang. Softly. An old song her mother had sung. Nothing famous, just a quiet melody that moved like water. She sang it once, almost under her breath, and then she left to finish her rounds. The patient's name was Stellan Merritt. He was 33 years old. He had been brought in 8 days ago after collapsing in a conference room in front of 11 people. A sudden brain hemorrhage, caught fast enough to operate, not fast enough to prevent the coma that followed. His company's board had sent flowers. His assistant called daily for updates. But in all 8 days, not a single person had come to sit with him. Wren had noticed this the way she noticed everything on her floor. Quietly, without judgment, filing it somewhere in the back of her mind where important things waited. By the third week, singing to Stellan had become part of her shift. Not performance, not ritual, just presence. She'd finish her checks, pull the chair a foot closer to his bed, and sing 2 or 3 songs in the low, careful way you sing when you're not sure if someone is listening but you choose to act as if they are. She talked too, sometimes, about small things. The weather outside. A funny thing a patient on the second floor had said. The way the hospital cafeteria inexplicably never had decaf after 8. She was aware it looked unusual. Her colleague Darby, who shared the floor on Tuesday and Thursday nights, had raised an eyebrow once. You know he can't hear you, Darby said, not unkindly. Wren had thought about this for a moment. We don't actually know that, she said. And I'd rather be wrong in the kind direction. Darby hadn't had an answer for that. What Wren didn't say, because she hadn't fully assembled the words yet, was that she also kept coming back because something about Stellan Merritt's situation unsettled her in a specific, purposeful way. A man who had apparently built an entire company, filled a conference room, managed people and systems and decisions, and had no one. No family who came. No friend who sat in the hall waiting for news. Just flowers from a board and a daily call from an assistant who was clearly reading from a script. She had looked at his intake form once, gently, professionally. Emergency contact. None listed. She had held that small box on the page for a long moment. None listed. As though he had filled out the form in a hurry, or filled it out the way people do when they believe, quietly, that they won't need it. On a Wednesday night in the 5th week, something changed. Wren was midway through the second song, the slower one, the one her mother called the hush song, when Stellan's right hand moved. Not a reflex, not a monitor-triggered tremor. A slow, deliberate closing of the fingers like someone reaching for something just out of reach in a dream. She stopped singing. The room held its breath. She leaned forward. Stellan. Her voice was steady, clinical, and also, she couldn't help it, gentle. If you can hear me, I need you to try to open your eyes. Nothing. But his hand didn't relax back flat. It stayed slightly curled, as if holding something invisible. She documented it precisely, flagged it for the morning neurologist, and sat back in the chair. Her heart was doing something complicated in her chest. She looked at his face. The stillness of it, the strange peaceful quality of a person suspended between one world and another, and she said quietly, "Come back when you're ready." There's no rush. I'll be here. She meant it as medical encouragement. She realized, driving home at 6 in the morning, that she also just meant it. The neurologist, Dr. Fenwick, ordered new scans. The results came back with language Ren had learned to translate from clinical to human: increased neural activity, possible emerging consciousness, continue stimulation protocol. In plain terms, he was waking up. Slowly. The way people wake from very deep sleep, not all at once but in layers. The night staff were brief. Familiar voices, familiar sounds, consistent sensory input. Standard protocol for coma recovery. Ren kept singing. And then, on a quiet Thursday morning, not her shift, she had come in early to cover for Darby, she was standing at his bedside adjusting his foreline when she heard it. A sound. Barely a sound. More like the shape of a word. She went completely still. It came again. Rough, uneven, almost inaudible, the voice of someone who hadn't used their throat in 39 days. Ren. She didn't move for a full 3 seconds. Then she leaned close, one hand resting carefully near his. Stellan. I'm here. I'm right here. His eyes opened. Slowly, painfully, with the tremendous effort of someone lifting something very heavy. They were unfocused at first, moving across the ceiling. Then they found her face. And he looked at her the way people look at the one thing that stayed constant while everything else dissolved. Recovery was slow, real, and unglamorous, the way recovery always is. There were hard days and setback days and days when Stellan sat in the therapy room looking out the window like a man recalculating everything he had ever decided about his life. Ren was his nurse, not his friend, and she kept that line clearly. But she also brought decaf when the cafeteria ran out. And sometimes, when the floor was quiet, she still sang, softly, down the hallway, and he told her once, during a routine check, that he had heard it. From the beginning? She asked. Not words, he said. Just sound. Like something keeping the dark from getting too heavy. She wrote that in no chart. She kept it somewhere quieter. What emerged in the weeks of his recovery, gradually and without drama, was the story behind the empty emergency contact box. Stellan had moved across the country at 22 and built his company with the focused, relentless energy of someone running towards something, or away from something. He had let friendships thin and family ties loosen because the work was always more urgent. He had told himself, in the way busy people do, that connection was something he'd come back to later. Later had arrived, unannounced, in a conference room. He said this to Ren one afternoon, not as confession but as plain observation. I had everything organized except the parts that mattered. She was quiet a moment. Well, she said, the parts that matter are still there. They don't expire. He was discharged on a Tuesday. He shook Dr. Fenwick's hand, thanked the day staff, and stopped at the nurse's station where Ren was filing end-of-shift note. I want to ask you something, he said. She looked up. Why did you keep coming back every night? That wasn't required. Ren set down her pen. Outside the window, the city was doing its ordinary, indifferent mourning. She thought about her mother, and the hush song, and the intake form with its empty box. Because nobody should be alone in the dark, she said simply. And I was there. He nodded. Slowly. The way people nod when something finally settles into place. Thank you, Ren, he said. The way you say something when you mean all of it. The singing, the staying, the small cup of decaf, and every quiet night that nobody ever saw. The moral lives in those 39 nights of singing to someone who may or may not have been listening, and choosing to sing anyway. Kindness doesn't wait for proof that it's working. It simply shows up, stays present, and trusts that somewhere in the silence it is being received. That is the whole of it. That has always been enough. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.